Welcome, everybody.
Hey, hey. Good boy, Tucker.
Work smarter where you want.
This is learning at its most fun.
Thanks for joining me on another weekly Thursday webinar that we have. My name is Catherine Beltran, and I'm a trainer here at Redtail Technology. Today, we're actually going to be talking about more of a how-to. And today it's on preparing for the great old wealth transfer that we feel like we keep talking about for the last few years. So today we're going to talk about more how to really utilize the CRM to prepare for those communications, to prepare for that relationship that we have. So as we talk about the ways for the industry to prepare for this inevitable wealth transfer, we might have realized along the way that we've been developing so much process on like opening and maintaining accounts, but we might have let other tools kind of slip through the cracks. So when we don't have this plan for this whole shift between three generations, it can feel extremely difficult and overwhelming. So unless you have the right strategy in place, you're going to sit there and go, oh my gosh, what have I been doing? So today we're going to talk about those different tools available within the CRM, and I'll give you some kind of hints and some tips along the way. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Now, let's go ahead and actually hop into the CRM. So let's slide on over a little bit. And for once, we're actually going to start with a family, a contact that we have. So I'm actually going to pull open my favorite family, and that's the good old Arnold Cooper family. So I was in them this morning, and I'm going to take a look at Kevin Arnold to at least start off with. So he is my head of household. He's my main point of contact. He's my actual client in this situation. And I can actually tell that right down here with that contact details. Now, this is going to be really important for the other remaining family members when I talk about them in just a second, but I really want us to remember that he is my active client, and he's actually my AAA category. Now, before I really get over into that topic, I do always want to give just that heads up that if you have slightly different ways of categorizing your clients, perfectly fine. There's no right or wrong way in these instances, but definitely utilize these fields to your advantage. So while I go over the rest of the family here in just a moment, you're going to see really why this is such an important factor when it really comes to this wealth transfer. So I'm actually going to scroll back up here. And right at the top, we actually see that he's married to Gwendolyn Winnie Cooper Arnold, and the Arnold Cooper family is listed right here. Now, for any of my new users out there, you might be sitting there staring at a client and you're seeing like the creative family here. That is extremely important because this is actually who links your immediate spouse and any children that they can claim. So instead of something happening to this client and then poof, something happens, they're deceased, we still know who those remaining factors are in this family relationship. If you don't take that time now, you're going to have some issues later down the road. So linking up that immediate family. So when you think of family, because this is going to again come into importance with memberships in a few minutes, family is the tax definition. Again, I can claim them in my family here, put them in here. So think spouses and dependents. Now with Kevin, I had listed him as my active client in my AAA category. Very often we get the question of, well, how should I appropriately list the spouse? How should I list the children? You always tell us don't have these statuses and these categories blank, but I don't know how to actually label them. So let's actually talk about those. So I'm going to actually click on command and open up here, or I can right click and open Gwendolyn so it opens up in a new tab. And I'm actually going to do the same thing with Danica and Fred as well. So I'm going to go ahead and hop over into Winnie first. And over here on the right-hand side, I actually have a different status for her. I have spouse of client. Now, again, this is for anyone who we want to keep that relationship intact. We know who it is, but we might not do direct business with them or they don't have direct assets under their actual name. This is something that you can use appropriately. Same can be said for something like children. Now, if I hop over, I'm going to actually kind of move my zoom for a second here. If I hop on over into Fred, I can actually see I used a slightly different status of dependent. Now you can always list it as child of client or dependent if you prefer, like we did here, but you might notice something very commonly between all three of them so far is this category of AAA. So again, we actually have it mirroring that wasn't English, mirroring, there we go, our head of household. So that way, when we have all of those families, we still know what they fall under. Now, again, if you're looking at your list and you're not seeing this as an option, but you wish it was an option, remember that status and category are customizable fields. So let's actually hop on over to our managed database list. So we'll come up to our name in the top right, come on down to manage your account. And then if you are an admin, you're going to see down here this admin only, manage database list is where you're going to want to come. So I'm going to click on that here. And right over here on this right-hand side, remember all of these fields are customizable fields, but for this exercise today, we're going to focus on status. Now, if you like spouse of client and or dependent as well, you can always add that in here. So you can add in new ones like we've done here. Now, if you have it listed as child of client and you're like, oh, I really actually like dependent instead, or vice versa, you can always come over here and edit this information so that way you have it stored the way you actually like it. Once it's available back here, that's when you can actually apply it. So Danica, she actually just got added today. We realized that we were missing a child. Shame on us. So we can actually come on over and click on this edit field over on the right. And this is actually where I'm going to pick that drop down. So again, she's another child. So we have dependent, and my category again matches the other remaining family members of AAA. So I'm going to go ahead and update that here. So now we all have them with that same category, but with the appropriate status. So both status and category, because again, those are both fields back here, they're both customizable and you can always tailor it to your own liking. But this at least gives us that start of where could this wealth transfer really go to? Who are those other contacts that I need to be aware of? Who are those other relationships that I need to maintain so that way that wealth doesn't go somewhere else? We want to keep that internal. Now, while I'm back here, there's actually one more field that I actually recommend when it comes to wealth transfer, and that's actually keywords. So if you want to have something that flat out says beneficiary, keywords is that spot to go. So if, again, it's not something you already have, you can always add it right up here. We do, however, have it. I'm going to scroll on down until we find it. I actually think, there we go. I can read beneficiary right here. So that way, again, it's something I can apply to my contacts. So again, if I come on up to Danica, scroll on down here, she already has it. But if this was not something that already existed, I would again click on add here, find that beneficiary. You can either old school scroll, or you can actually just search at the top and apply that value. So again, status, category, and keywords all are extremely important fields when it comes to really adding in those characteristics and defining who these contacts on our CRM are. The biggest misconception that we always get with CRM is that the C stands for clients, and therefore we can only have our clients in here. That's not the case. It's contacts. We can keep track of these spouses, these children, so that way we have that relationship in here for when that wealth transfer ultimately happens. So I'm going to go ahead and close out some of these tabs, clear this up a little bit, but we're actually still going to maintain this whole conversation of family. So I did mention earlier that this is really that tax definition. I can claim them, therefore they're part of my family. Another popular question we always get though is, well, what happens if Fred grows up? He's now a full-fledged adult. He's also now a client who has his own family. What do we do? How do we still maintain that this, in fact, is still the father to this son? Well, instead of them having in the family, because you can only belong to one family at a time, and if he's now an active client with his own spouse and children, you'd initially want to actually remove him from this family. Now, removing him from the family is not removing him from the CRM. It's actually just kind of severing this relationship in this section. But over on the left, you're going to see this option of more. Click on more and scroll down until you actually see memberships. Memberships is where you can actually keep track of all of those important relationships that you have. So you can actually list in here father to son without losing, again, that connection. You can also do things back here like spouses or ex-spouses, deceased spouses. You could do things like trusts that are linked over here as well. So really don't limit yourself to just the default of employee versus employer. Feel free to add whatever else you need. Now, when I come over here to add, and I am going to actually link up Fred here because it looks like I'm missing him. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to start searching for Fred, give it a second. Here he is right at the top. Now the link contact is actually talking about who Fred is. So Fred is actually the son. So I'm going to scroll down until I see son. And the contact is Kevin. So Kevin is the father. There we go. And then add my membership. Now, memberships is yet another field that you can actually customize and add to. So if you would rather have flat out son, because I want to say it's actually just child to parent, you can also add those membership codes right back here as well. So I know ex-spouse isn't in here, neither is deceased spouse nor a specific son or daughter, but that doesn't mean that you can't have it as an option should you really just wish to have that. So again, anything that we have in here, keeping that family still connected, or extended family in this instance, all connected, you'll see that here. So again, kind of a recap of what we've talked about so far to really help yourself prepare. Utilize those statuses to really answer who this person is to us. Use that category to, again, match what kind of service level we should actually be delivering to them. Utilize keywords such as beneficiary, so we know actually who is a beneficiary in this instance. Still linking up contacts, whether it's immediate through the family or linking through memberships. Those are what we've discussed so far. Now, besides this, though, what else can we really help set ourselves up for success? Actually comes back to defining what we really want us to do. So let me come on back to the PowerPoint because I actually have a little bit of a preparation here, and it's talking about the communication guide. So besides having the contacts in our CRM, we want to actually still connect with our contacts in our CRM. Of course, we can set up their accounts, we can set them up, we can have them as perfect as possible. But if we never actually talk to them, eventually they're going to choose to leave us. So we want to be able to establish how often we're actually communicating with our clients or our contacts and with what method. So here we have like a little sample of what we've kind of established. Again, we use an A, AA, AAA for our categories. If you use A, B, C, D, that's perfectly fine. Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, again, that makes sense. It's perfectly fine. It's up to you how you do it. Same with how often you want to communicate with them. So in here, we have how often our newsletter goes out, which is actually common between all three of our tiers. We have how often we're supposed to be reviewing with them. So we have some that are semi-annual, annually, and upon request. We also have birthday, which, hey, maybe someone gets a phone call versus just an email or physical card. Again, that's up to you, but if you always compare your highest tier, your VIPs, your AAAs, if they're treated the exact same as your single A's and they find out, that's going to be an awkward conversation. So your highest tier, they should actually have something that is distinguishable. So in our instance, we've got our birthday card, our phone call versus a birthday email and a phone call versus just an email. So again, this is just some examples that we've come across that really can help impact our communication we have with our clients to actually keep them as clients. And again, we don't want that wealth to go anywhere else. So maintaining that relationship down through to the children, so that way it all stays within the house. So this again is all an example that we have here. You don't have to do it the exact same way. You don't have to have it as semi-annually. I've met offices who actually reach out to clients every 90 days. That's what they choose to do. So whatever it is that you want to have, make sure that it's as easy as possible. So that way, if anyone's new to your firm, they can always take a look at this and go, ah, they're a AAA, which means this. So having kind of this cheat sheet on how often we should communicate is something that's incredibly useful for you in your office. Now, the next topic I want to talk about, I'm actually going to hop back into the CRM really quick. And this is actually corresponding with this communication. So setting yourselves up to make sure how often I should communicate really could come down to something as simple as that client review reminder. It could be as simple as something as an activity saying, hey, give this client a call, and feel free to use those templates. So again, using these different tools. But the most important, make sure you're actually keeping track of what you're doing with all of these notes. If you had a conversation talking about the children that you want to remember, hey, they really love this sports fan, or hey, they have this, keep track of notes here. We mentioned keywords, but doesn't mean you can't use user-defined fields as well. So anything that is of utmost importance that we don't want to just have stored up here or stored on a bunch of Post-it notes, use these tools to your advantage. So user-defined fields is yet another customizable field back here, but it is something that you can also keep track of more of those miscellaneous details. Think of this as adding to that client service level, again, giving them no reason to ever leave us or ever think, hey, you know what, maybe they're not a good fit for us. Remembering those little nuances can all start with user-defined fields. So this really is that kind of catch-all DIY field to keep track of this information, but it again can help with that whole service level. Now, again, activities and notes are both something that you can utilize to help build with that client relationship. Client reviews can help with that whole communication guide and how frequently you might need to communicate with them. User-defined fields adds value similar to keywords to the contact, but what else can you use? Now, I would feel completely remiss and absolutely terrible if I didn't mention the next one, which is workflows. So workflows are a very useful, that was in English again, very useful tool to help with those processes that you have. So if there are fields that we find in the office are just never getting filled out, we always forget about them. And then 6 months down the road, we realize it. Nip that immediately. You can always create a workflow that's more of like a checklist. So on this one here, we have a required information workflow, which when you look at it is very basic, and workflows don't have to be complicated. So in here we have gather the following contact information, make sure they have an address, a phone number, a website, their date of birth, which again is helpful for birthdays, tax ID, referral, miscellaneous important details such as keywords and user-defined fields. So if it's something, again, that you feel your office is just really bad at enforcing these certain tools, use a workflow that automatically gives us that checklist. There's no shame in saying that we forgot to do something. We're human, we're not perfect, but workflows can help us to make sure that we get it as perfect as possible. So I'm going to actually hop back before we talk about that secondary feature of automations. So should you wish to pursue something like a workflow to ensure we have all of that information, you can always come up to your name in the top right, come on down to manage your account, and you'll build it back here under workflow templates. Now, I don't actually have enough time to hold you all hostage for the rest of the day to talk about workflows. And good news, we are actually going to be talking about them in a much deeper dive next month, but you can have that checklist like this, so that way it has all of that important information. Again, you get to pick what you want in here. So don't feel like you have to copy this exactly, but it will help guide you. Once you have it set up back here, this is where you can reuse it over and over and over and over again until the end of time. Now, again, if you're like me though, where sometimes there's a screw loose up here and you're going to forget something, because I do all the time. If the thought of having to remember to launch a workflow up here at the top, quick add, come to workflow, if that's something that can again easily slip through the crack, that's where automations come in. So let me come on back here real quick and talk about automations. So the automation in this concept could actually be a contact added. So I'm not doing anything different besides actually adding the person into my database, but by me adding that person in, I can have that workflow link automatically. So I'm not doing anything extra. It's just automatically happening for me. So I love it. So we have a contact getting added, which would link that particular workflow, so the one I just showed you, which could happen to have if there's certain conditions like child of client or spouse of client. So let's come on back here. So again, I can just add a contact up here, quick add contact, have that whole process, as long as I create an automation, which also exists back under manage your account, also under automation templates, and you'd actually go through that process. So this again can be extremely useful anytime we're adding in context. So you can always have that workflow triggering. You can also do it maybe off of a status. So if someone was originally listed as a dependent, but now they're a client and there's a whole other process they have to go through, you can have a status change triggering it as well. So really get creative here, really take this to your advantage though, so that way you have that consistent process going through it. But this is an optional tool that can make it so that's as seamless as possible. So again, the required fields that I really would recommend when it comes to a wealth transfer, your status, your categories, and your keywords are hands down the most important. no questionable, you need those to use that. Use those activities, those notes and workflows to really help that communication continue on as they are an actual client. Use that family section in that membership to, again, track all of those contacts in there, so that way no one comes as a surprise further down the road. But this is ultimately how you will actually use the CRM for this wealth transfer. So there are certain things, of course, that are completely optional in terms of how you would want to do it. I have, again, had offices who, instead of having the categories matched, they created a new one that was actually just child. That's perfectly fine if that works for you. You can also have different statuses. Again, maybe you want to have it as contact of family or family member of client, however you want to do it, but ultimately build them back here first.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this particular session. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 800-206-5030, option 3 for support, or just shoot us an email over to support@redtailtechnology.com. Thanks a lot and have a great day.